in a federal court decision that will follow Bill Barr around for the rest of his life like toilet paper stuck to his shoe, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. found last year that when Robert Mueller turned in his report on the Russia investigation to the Justice Department, Attorney General William Barr lied to the public about what was in it. The judge's ruling said, quote, Attorney General Barr failed to provide a thorough representation of the findings set forth in the report, causing this court to question whether Attorney General Barr's intent was to create a one-sided narrative about the Mueller report, a narrative that is clearly, in some respects, substantively at odds with the actual report. That was last year, a federal court finding that Trump's Attorney General, William Barr, told the public a porky pie, told the public an untrue story about what was in the Mueller report. Well, now, today, a second federal judge has just ruled that Bill Barr and the Trump-era Justice Department were also disingenuous with the court. They, in effect, lied to the court when they told her and they told the public a made-up story, a lie, about why former President Donald Trump was not put on trial, was not charged with obstruction of justice on the basis of the evidence that was collected against President Trump in Mueller's investigation. You might remember Mueller's report started with Volume 1, that was about what Russia did to interfere in the election. And then Volume 2, you probably remember, it laid out more than 10 instances in great detail of potentially criminal obstruction of justice committed by then President Trump. Now, when Mueller finished his report, you might remember that Trump's Attorney General, Bill Barr, told the public that he, William Barr, had consulted with Justice Department attorneys and had decided, on their advice, that despite these 10-plus detailed instances of alleged criminal obstruction of justice by President Trump laid out in the Mueller report, Bill Barr, consulting with Justice Department attorneys, had determined that despite all of that, nothing Trump did was really a crime. And so Trump shouldn't be prosecuted. Remember, Barr said that they didn't rely on this prohibition on a president being prosecuted while he's sitting in office. He said, actually, we decided at the Justice Department, I decided on consultation with Justice Department attorneys, that none of those things described constituted a crime. That's why Trump won't be charged. That's the story they told the public. That apparently is not what happened. Federal Judge Amy Berman Jackson ruling today that this supposed advice that William Barr got from the Justice Department that supposedly led him to conclude that these weren't crimes and therefore Trump shouldn't be criminally charged. She ruled today that that advice to William Barr has to be released to the public. The Justice Department under William Barr had withheld that. People had filed FOIA requests for it. An oversight group called CREW had filed a FOIA lawsuit seeking that document. The Justice Department had demurred, had said, no, we're not going to release that document because that's real legal advice and we don't release those kinds of things to the public. The judge ruled today, actually, that document wasn't real legal advice. She said it wasn't anything the Trump-era Justice Department said that that document was. She says they have been disingenuous about this part of the process, too. She says, in fact, William Barr decided from the outset that President Trump wouldn't be charged with any crimes. And what he had the Justice Department cook up for him was an after-the-fact rationalization of that decision that he had already made. And if you do that, that's not some protected, privileged legal advice thing that can be shielded from the public, particularly if you lie to the court about it. Because, if you're the U.S. Justice Department, if you are the Attorney General of the United States and you lie to a federal judge and the judge finds out about it, particularly if this is not the first time that you've done it, the federal judge is going to be mad. And they're going to rule against you in, frankly, kind of cinematic terms. Listen to this. This is from the very, very top, the very start of Judge Jackson's ruling today. Quote, on Friday, March 22nd, 2019, Special Counsel Robert Mueller delivered his report of the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election to then Attorney General of the United States, William P. Barr. But the Attorney General did not share it with anyone else. Instead, before the weekend was over, he sent a letter to congressional leaders purporting to summarize the principal conclusions set out in the report, compressing into less than 4 pages the approximately 200 highly detailed and painstakingly footnoted pages of Volume 1, which discusses the Russian government's interference in the election, and the almost 200 equally detailed pages of Volume 2, which concerns acts taken by then-President Trump in connection with the investigation. The Attorney General's 4-page letter asserted that the special counsel did not draw a conclusion one way or the other as to whether the examined conduct constituted obstruction of justice. It went on to announce Attorney General Barr's own opinion that the evidence developed during the special counsel's investigation is not sufficient to establish that President Trump committed an obstruction of justice offense. Judge Berman Jackson then continues, quote, "The president then declared himself to have been fully exonerated." The Attorney General's characterization of what he had hardly had time to skim, much less study closely, prompted an immediate reaction as politicians and pundits took to their microphones and Twitter feeds to decry what they feared was an attempt to hide the ball. Even the customarily taciturn special counsel was moved to pen an extraordinary public rebuke in which he said in part, quote, "The summary letter the department sent to Congress and released to the public late in the afternoon of March 24th did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of the special counsel office's work and conclusions. There is now public confusion about critical aspects of the results of our investigation. This threatens to undermine a central purpose for which the department appointed the special counsel, to assure full public confidence in the outcome of the investigations." The judge continues. Mueller called for the immediate release of his report, but it remained under wraps for another 3 weeks. On April 18, 2019, Attorney General Barr appeared before Congress to deliver the report. He asserted that he reached the conclusion he'd announced about not prosecuting President Trump for obstruction of justice, quote, "in consultation with the Office of Legal Counsel and other Justice Department lawyers." The oversight group, CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, immediately fired off a Freedom of Information Act request for any records related to those consultations. The Justice Department demurred, meaning the Justice Department rejected that FOIA request to release the documents. The judge continues, quote, "What remains at issue today is a memo to the Attorney General dated March 24th, 2019, that specifically addresses the subject matter of the letter transmitted to Congress, the question of whether then-President Trump would be criminally prosecuted for obstruction of justice. What remains at issue today is that memo." The judge concludes, quote, "It is time for the public to see that, too." It was time for the public to see the Mueller report rather than Attorney General Barr's misrepresentations about what was in it. It is now time for the public to see that advice to him on whether the president would be prosecuted. That supposed advice to him on whether President Trump would be prosecuted. This is Judge Amy Berman Jackson ordering the release of a Justice Department document we've never seen, which was the supposed justification for not bringing criminal obstruction of justice charges against President Trump. In her ruling today, she orders the release of that never-before-seen document. She also just ransacks the Trump-era Justice Department and Bill Barr's job running it, calling him personally disingenuous, saying the Justice Department took steps to, quote, "obfuscate the true purpose of what they were doing." She says the Justice Department, quote, "strongly resisted allowing her, even her, the judge, to see this document that they've been trying to keep secret, but she did see it, and when she did see it, she finally understood why they had been trying to keep it under wraps." She says, quote, "The review of the document reveals that Attorney General Barr was not then engaged in making a decision about whether President Trump should be charged with obstruction of justice. The fact that he would not be prosecuted was a given." She says, quote, "There was no decision actually being made as to whether the then president would be prosecuted." So, surprise! What we thought happened. Robert Mueller and his team of prosecutors laid out over several hundred pages detailed evidence of all the multiple times they believed President Trump committed crimes by obstructing justice while he was in office. When that report was completed and submitted to the Justice Department, William Barr said instantly that the Justice Department had carefully reviewed every little bit of that evidence and concluded that nothing the president did seemed like a crime, And that's why President Trump was never prosecuted for his actions. Well, now this federal judge has actually seen what happened behind the scenes. And it turns out their public representations about what was going on inside the Justice Department with considering this evidence were lies. It turns out they never substantively considered Trump's alleged crimes. They just decided, in her words, as a given from the outset, that Trump wouldn't be charged with anything no matter what. And then they created a pseudo-legal paper trail to cover their tracks on that after the fact. And then, according to the judge, they lied to a federal judge about what they had done. And now she has caught them. She has their interoffice emails describing the production of this document that purported to justify the explanation. She has the chronology of when the decision was made and when they produced the document that purportedly was the advice that led Barr to make that decision, which was back-asswards in terms of its chronology. And she's now ordering the Justice Department to release the paper trail that they concocted here in order to support this lie, that they expected would never be shown to the public. But here's the thing. Under new management, right? Merrick Garland is now the new Attorney General. President Biden's appointed Attorney General. And he now has the choice as to whether or not to appeal the judge's ruling. I mean, this is an administration that is in every way looking forward and not back, right? Merrick Garland is the Attorney General now, all new leadership of the Justice Department, all new priorities, moving forward with a million things at once. And here's a judge saying, you know, your immediate predecessor in this job lied to me, lied to the court, and lied to the American public about something as freaking serious as why the former president was not charged with crimes. You cool with the evidence of that all being released to the public? Because it's coming out in 2 weeks unless you want to appeal my ruling. What are you going to do? Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.